Lots of talk about the recent revelations of the federal Liberals cabinet ministers spending tax dollars. Health minister's $3,700 limo bill for 2 days. That might be as much as 10 times the going rate. The environment minister's $6,600 bill for a vanity photographer to catch every glorious moment of her trip to Paris. And speaking of Paris, the three bureaucrats who spent over $12,000, they turned the Paris climate vacation adventure into their own personal gourmet extravaganza. As I said, lots of talk, complete with taxpayer outrage on the one side and government spending apologists on the other. Although I must admit that I'm surprised by the number of apologists in the commentariat, like the Globe and Mail's editorial writers, Jonathan Kay, formerly editorial page editor of the National Post, whose attitude seems to be no big deal. Who cares? It's a drop in the bucket compared to other expenditures. But I love that response. It demonstrates a complete disconnect from the public, which is a key characteristic of the establishment media. The bottom line is that if you think you care about the public, hey, you're sadly mistaken. The vast majority of the media elite and the commentary actually can't stand you. We're the little people. In this case, worrying about petty cash and the fact that it's our cash, our money, seems to make no difference. The irony is that none of those apologists would look the other way if they were at a restaurant, a few items were added to the bill that they didn't order. I don't believe for a second they'd sit there and go, oh, $27 for something I didn't order or want. That's okay because it's just a small portion of my annual expenditures. But that seems to be the argument here, although it's not just small amounts. Come on. The recent Fraser Institute review of Auditor General's reports at the federal level from 1988 to 2013, it chronicled 614 failed programs and initiatives, costing somewhere between $158 billion and $197 billion of our tax dollars. And keep in mind, again, that's just the federal level. But I love this. When pressed about the fact that the Paris Climate Change Vacation Conference cost $973,995.42, Foreign Affairs Minister Stéphane Dion said, in quotes, "This government will not apologize for its position on climate change," end of quote. What a classic big government, to heck with the taxpayers' response. No one was talking about climate change. They're talking about wasting taxpayers' money. And a government commitment to climate change or any other issue doesn't justify a cavalier approach to our tax dollars. Kind of interesting to note, though, that Mr. Trudeau's government, especially when it comes to that climate file, is more concerned with symbolism than any government in history. Yet it's not concerned with the symbolism of aristocrat-like spending on the public's dime. Now, personally, I get angry because when cabinet ministers of any political stripe start spending my money on things they would never spend their own on, because I think it shows a profound disrespect for the work that's done to create the income in the first place. But the bigger picture is this. It's outrageous that MPs' expenses aren't audited. And that seems to be the norm. Now, thanks to Mr. Trudeau's rush to appease power groups, the repeal of Bill C-377, which meant that union elites would have to report their specifics of expenditures above $5,000, well, that bill's going out the window. Now, the government and the union leaders didn't offer any alternative for what they say are Bill 377 shortcomings. So, just like the MPs, there's going to be no auditing of the union elites' expenses. But let me finish by bringing one aspect to your attention that much of the discussion misses, and I suspect it's done to mislead us. In a nutshell, don't be fooled by the argument that all expenses are accounted for. Auditing and accounting are not the same thing. Our MPs' expenses are accounted for, but they're not audited. We're given large categories of expenses, like travel, research, or staffing, but it doesn't go any further. For example, we'll get told how much they spent on travel, but we don't hear specifically how that money was spent. And that's the key to understanding whether your money, my money, is being spent effectively. We do it on both big and small items. It's funny how many of us don't seem to care. I mean, look at how we gave the big thumbs up, big nod to the $10 billion in infrastructure spending. All of it with borrowed money, but we didn't know the specifics. I mean, for example, did you think the spending would be on reconstructing the fourth hole at the Yarmouth, Nova Scotia Golf and Country Club to make it more challenging? Because that's what's included. The point is that contrary to the popular political drift of the day, we're not all victims. We can do something here. But by refusing to demand specific spendings, items, We deserve all the limo drivers we get. Of course, it's under the transportation heading. We deserve all the personal vanity photographers under the communication heading, and all the gourmet meals under travel we get. No, we're not victims. We can demand better.